Different people communicate differently. Schulz von Thun differentiates between 8 different communication styles. Grab your favorite drink, make yourself comfortable. Today we'll have a look at them. Welcome to the Soft Skill channel. My name is Sebastian Jung and today I will present to you the 8 different styles of communication by Schulz von Thun. There are 8 different styles and I also have some general remarks, but it'll be easier if we look at the first style beforehand. When we use the needily dependent style, we present ourselves as helpless and appeal to the other party to help and support us. Oh, I don't know what to do anymore. It's all getting too much for me. I have this YouTube channel going, but I don't know what to do. It's all so complicated. But you are so competent and well educated. Oh, you can explain so well. Maybe you can. Do you remember the communication square, the 4 sides model by Schulz von Thun? I will put the link to the video in the video description. It isn't strictly necessary to understand this video, but it is helpful and it might be more fun. Each communication style has a basic pattern of communication. For the needily dependent style, the typical self-revelation is, I can't make it on my own, I'm helpless. Combined with the relationship message, you are strong and competent. And the appeal, protect and support me. Now, this isn't clearly stated, as in my short demonstration that was a bit exaggerated. However, it clearly resonates in the communication. How the relationship develops depends on whether the other party agrees to support the needily dependent or whether it refuses. We will look at the situation where the other party agrees in a moment when we talk about the helping style. The situation where the other party refuses plays out like this. The other party refuses to support the needily dependent, or it doesn't provide as much support as was desired. Thus, the needily dependent feels left alone and he intensifies his efforts, he intensifies his appeals. Thus, the other party feels even more annoyed, even more pressured. Maybe before he gave some support, but now he is no longer willing to give an inch, seeing that the other person will take a mile, so he refuses even more, making the needily dependent one feel even more left alone, and so on and so on. This goes on and on in a vicious circle with no beginning and no end, and both participants feel that their own actions are merely reactions to the actions of the other person. Schulz von Thun gives some advice on how to deal with the needily dependent style. He recommends to refer the role of the active director back to the needily dependent. For example, by saying, what have you considered so far? What's your plan so far? Or what exactly would you like me to do to help you? If the needily dependent gets into this, then he will still get support from you, but he will remain in charge and thus he will retain some independence. As I mentioned before, I have some general remarks. First of all, I present to you the communication styles in their purest form. However, in reality, you won't encounter these pure forms. You will always deal with a mix of different communication styles. Furthermore, it's very important to note that this is not a typology. It's not about, which one am I? It's a classification of communication styles. There is no such person as a needily dependent person. We all use the needily dependent style every now and then. We use all 8 different communication styles, depending on the situation, depending on the relationship, depending on whom we are talking to. For the sake of simplicity and brevity, I use phrases like the needily dependent or the needily dependent one. To be more precise, I'd actually have to say the person who predominantly uses the needily dependent style in this specific situation, in this relationship constellation towards this other person. However, since this would be a bit long, for the sake of brevity, I say the needily dependent. Still, please keep in mind, this is not a classification of personalities. This is not a typology. We might have a tendency to use a certain style more intensely and more frequently. We will talk about this in more detail next week in a separate video, where we take a look at the communication styles from the perspective of personal development. There we will talk about what we can do to improve and develop if we notice that we tend to stick to a certain communication style. The needily dependent style sounded pretty negative just now, and spoiler alert, this will be pretty much the same for all the other 7 styles. There is something good in each of the styles. For example, if we use the needily dependent style, we are able to admit our own weaknesses, our own helplessness. We are able to ask for help and able to accept help, abilities that a lot of people lack. However, in the form I present here, we have a negative exaggeration. We have a positive direction gone bad by being overdone. Schulz von Thun describes the communication styles in this way, probably because this is where they appear most clearly and are most clearly visible in their specific features. So next we have the helping style. With the helping style, we act strong and confident. We offer ourselves as patient listeners, advisors, and supporters. The helping style is kind of a counterpart to the needily dependent style. Oh, you look awfully depressed today. Tell me, what's going on? Don't worry, I'll find a solution. I will help you. I will get you out of that. For the helping style, the basic pattern contains the self-revelation, I am strong and resilient, I don't need anybody. Combined with the relationship message, oh you poor thing, you really are to be pitied and you need my help. And the appeal, tell me what's wrong. At first glance, the helping style doesn't look too bad. However, even here we have this negative exaggeration. For example, the helping style might use the supporting of others to avoid having to face his own helplessness and weakness. He might build up a self-image that says, I am strong and noble and I don't need anybody. And in order to maintain this self-image, he might work to the point of collapse in supporting others. Furthermore, he might unconsciously stick to treating symptoms only, so he can maintain the dependency of the other party and maintain his own superior position. Now, this is a topic that is too complex to be discussed comprehensively here. So for now, just keep in mind that even for the helping style, there are several problems that can occur, and there are several directions this style can take a wrong turn. The helping style and the needily dependent style can easily get into a vicious circle where the helping style provides support, thus the needily dependent feels affirmed in his helplessness. He increases his appeals to the helping one feels at rest in his strength and competence, so he is willing to provide more support, making the needily dependent one feel even more affirmed in his helplessness, and so on and so on. This doesn't look too bad at first glance. They seem to be getting along just fine and they seem to complement each other here. However, this might easily take a turn for the worse. Now, first of all, in this relationship, both parties only show the side that is strong and well developed, and the underdeveloped side, the weak side, isn't used, and this deficit is maintained in this vicious circle. Now, furthermore, an additional dynamic might come into play here, because each successful run through this circle, even though he gets the desired support, still means frustration and disappointment to the needily dependent one because of his own dependency. And this frustration is usually directed towards the helping one, who reflects his own helplessness and who might build his self-esteem on the support that he gives to the needily dependent one. Thus, the needily dependent might deny victories and successes to the helping one. Suddenly, the advice is no longer good enough. Suddenly, all of the help and support fails or makes the problem even worse. Of course, this means frustration and disappointment for the helping one. He will increase his efforts in supporting the needily dependent, but he won't be able to hide his anger and frustration, making the needily dependent feel even more useless. He can't even get it right with competent support. Thus, the feeling of gratitude will vanish even more, and the frustration will grow, making him deny even more successes to the helping one, and so on. This circle can also turn into the vicious circle of refusal that we discussed before, if the helping one at some point tries to withdraw and more refuses his support. Next, we have the selfless style, to which Schulz von Thun deliberately gave this hyphen. The selfless style is similar to the helping style, but it doesn't come from a position of sovereign superiority, but rather from below, from a submissive position. How would you like the video to continue? We will do it just as you say. I'm not important here. I don't get a say in that. I don't have any opinion. You are the important one here. We will do it just as you wish. The basic pattern of communication for the selfless style contains the self-revelation, I am nothing, combined with the relationship message, you are important, and the appeal, tell me how you want me to be. In conversations, the selfless style will agree with the speaker, he will laugh where it is expected of him, no matter if he actually finds it funny or not, and he will rarely voice his own opinions. Furthermore, he might frequently use phrases that disparage himself, such as, I know this is a stupid question, I'm so sorry for taking up your valuable time, I'm sure I'm bothering you, things like that. However, we shouldn't assume that the selfless style does not pursue own interests, that it doesn't have a will of its own. Often the relationships of the selfless style contain a certain element of manipulation, but again, this is too complex a topic to comprehensively discuss here. So just keep in mind that this element of manipulation might be in play. So again, there might emerge a vicious circle that doesn't look so bad at first glance. The selfless one makes himself small and elevates the other person. The other person feels sublime and superior, and thus he treats the selfless one with benevolent with a feeling of benevolent superiority. The selfless one feels inferior but secure. However, this circle can quickly take a turn for the worse and really turn nasty, because after a while the other party will get annoyed by the submissive behavior of the selfless one. The other party will long for interaction with a equally strong partner, and he will start distancing himself. Now there he is meeting the selfless one at a sore point, because the selfless one will feel neglected and will get a fear of loss, and he will intensify his efforts. He will try even harder to please the other party, and thus annoying the other party even more, and the treatment of the selfless one by the other party will get worse and worse. The other party will hassle and bully the selfless one, and the selfless one will undergo this treatment without fighting back, and will be affirmed in his feeling of inferiority, and he will only have the moral superiority, and he might play this off, and the feeling of guilt might irritate the other party even more and make him treat the selfless one even worse. So this can really take a nasty turn and develop into really bad situations. Again, we can't discuss this in great detail here, as it is a rather complex situation. Once the situation has turned bad, as described, the other party usually uses the aggressive devaluating style. The aggressive devaluating style is a kind of counterpart to the selfless style. They both are based on a fragile and insecure self-esteem. However, while the selfless one openly shows this insecurity and idolizes the other party, the aggressive devaluating style will hide its insecurity, and to protect itself, it will disparage the others. Oh, what have you done again? You realize this is all your fault, don't you? I really don't know how to put up with your incompetence. The basic pattern for the aggressive devaluating style includes the self-revelation, I'm on top. Nobody can do anything to me. And to make sure this is never questioned, the relationship message, you are to blame, you are pathetic, you are stupid. And the appeal, give in, confess your guilt, are used against the other party. You probably know the proverbial kiss up, kick down principle. This is a combination of the selfless style and the aggressive devaluating style. It's a nice example for how two styles that seem so different and that seem to contradict each other are both used by the same person in different situations and relationships. We already discussed the aggressive devaluating style in a vicious circle with the selfless style. In this case, we had a complementary relationship where we had an inferior person and a superior, wrong way around, a superior person and an inferior one in a superior position and inferior position who complemented each other, but there might also emerge a symmetrical vicious circle where two people are using the aggressive devaluating style against each other, where both are hurt and attacked and angered by the behavior of the other party, and they react by disparaging and accusing the other party. And of course, we again have the situation that both feel their own behavior is merely a reaction triggered by the other party's behavior. Yeah, the other guy started. You can't put up with everything, right? The self-demonstrating style, like the selfless style and the aggressive devaluating style, is driven by self-doubt. However, instead of belittling others, he tries to put himself in the right light. Oh, I could go on for hours holding eloquent lectures about communication psychology. But I have to step down for a moment and drive my shiny new sports car into the garage. I think it's starting to rain. By the way, did you notice the nice picture frames I bought? I put some of my diplomas and awards in there as placeholders. Later I want to put pictures from my Great World trip last year in there. The basic communication pattern here contains the relationship message, you will judge me as a strict judge, or compete with me as a rival. Therefore, we have the self-revelation, I am without fault, and the appeal, acknowledge me. In the video about communication problems, I talked a bit about showing off and facade techniques, and this plays an important role here. The self-demonstrating style seems to be able to talk openly about himself and to reveal something about himself. However, all his self-revelation is actually a carefully constructed mask. Again, a symmetrical vicious circle might emerge if the other party feels under pressure due to the self-demonstrating style showing off, and he thinks, oh, I have to try to keep up here. And then he will try to show off himself, again putting pressure on the self-demonstrating style who tries to show off even more, and this turns into a kind of competition. A complementary circle is also possible if the other party is annoyed by the self-demonstrating style showing off, and for example he says, oh, you are not so great, look here, your weaknesses and faults. Or he might say, yeah, we get it, you are the greatest, just leave me alone. And in such a case, the self-demonstrating style doesn't feel acknowledged, and he will try even harder to show off, and he will provide even more evidence of his greatness and try to justify himself and work even harder on his self-image. Next we have the determining and controlling style. We are captured by this style when we think that other people are unreliable and it's in order to tell them how to do things properly. Are you taking notes while watching the video? You will forget all the information in no time if you don't write it down. This is common knowledge, isn't it? After the video, a short walk in the fresh air might be in order to get your thoughts straight, but don't forget your jacket, it's cold outside. The basic communication pattern here includes the self-revelation, I know what is right, combined with the relationship message, you are a risk, you need to be guided. And thus there are plenty of appeals of the kind, this is how it's done, you are not supposed to, and so on. Control and the fear of losing control are important aspects here. A typical vicious circle will emerge between a determining and controlling leader or teacher or guru and needily dependent or selfless students or participants. The leader will signal, everybody listen to my command. The participants will feel relieved that the responsibility is taken away from them, and they will signal, tell us what to do. This will affirm the leader in his position of strength, and so on. The big risk here is that the leader or teacher or whatever, or guru, now especially for the guru, that he will unconsciously or consciously keep his participants in their state of dependency so he can maintain his position of superiority. Furthermore, in a position of power, there's always a big risk of the aggressive, devaluating style showing up. For example, the classic authoritarian leadership style is a combination of the determining and controlling style and the aggressive and devaluating style. Another typical example for a vicious circle is that between strict parents and rebellious children. The parents try to exert control over the children feel patronized, they rebel, thus the parents feel not taken seriously and their authority not being respected, thus they set up even stricter rules, put more pressure on the children, and so on. Next we have the distance style. With the distance style, we try to keep our distance from other people who try to get too close to us, and from personal emotional topics that make us feel uneasy. We are having a factual discussion here. This really does not belong here. I also don't want to talk about that. We should keep a cool head and stick to the facts. Here, the basic pattern of communication contains a lot of factual messages. It's the facts that count. The relationship message is, you are way too affectionate and too emotional, combined with the appeal, don't get too close to me. The self-revelation is, what's going on inside me doesn't matter, besides there's nothing going on inside me. A typical vicious circle we might see here is one where the distant and somewhat cool behavior of the distance style is met with rejection from the other party. Oh well, as you please, we don't want to have anything to do with you either. This will make the distant one feel unwelcome and shunned and rejected in human interaction, so he will put up even greater barriers that again cause rejection, and so on. There is also a rather complex vicious circle here, the one between closeness and distance. We all have a need for closeness and security and intimacy. And we also all have a need for distance and freedom and independence. Now, a need that is fulfilled is not felt, and a need that is permanently fulfilled we often aren't even aware of anymore. So, if a person with a strong desire for closeness and a person with a strong desire for distance come together, let's say in a relationship, the following vicious circle will emerge. The closeness person will try to get closer to the partner. The partner will feel oppressed and restricted and under pressure, and he will distance himself. This will make the closeness partner feel rejected and maybe will evoke a fear of loss in him, and his need for closeness remains unsatisfied. Thus, he will try harder, making the distance partner feeling even more oppressed, and so on. A treacherous aspect in this circle is that a clarifying discussion, a clarifying conversation, which is usually a good idea in a crisis, especially in a relationship, here is part of the problem, because such a conversation means closeness and intimacy. Thus, it is something that is suggested by the closeness partner and rejected by the distance partner. The vicious circle might flip and switch directions sometimes when the closeness partner, after some time, gives up and stops his attempts to get closer to the partner and distances himself. At this point, the distance partner suddenly starts to feel his own need for closeness that isn't satisfied anymore, and he starts approaching the partner until the partner's needs for closeness again gets too much for him and the circle flips again. So, as you see, this is a rather complex circle and a rather complex situation. So again, we can't discuss it here in full detail. Rather, we will proceed to the 8th and final communication style. while we avoid any self-revelation when using the distance style, there are also situations where we can't stop talking about ourselves. In such situations, the talkative dramatizing style kicks in. Did I tell you how I wrote the script for the video yesterday? Oh, that took forever. And then I got hungry. My girlfriend made us fried noodles. Oh, those were tasty. By the way, did you ever try my spaghetti carbonara? Those are really good. I'm quite proud of them. There is always a big discussion whether the original recipe calls for cream or merely egg yolk. Well, I don't really care. The important thing is whether it's tasty. Am I right? Oh, let's talk about you. How did you like my video last week? The basic pattern of communication here focuses heavily on self-revelation. Listen, this is me. Combined with the appeal, pay attention to me and confirm my self-image. The relationship message is, you are important to me as a welcome but interchangeable audience. And therein lies the problem of the talkative dramatizing style. We have again a style that looks somewhat good at first glance. We have someone who is able to speak freely, who appears self-confident, who is willing to reveal something about himself, but there is no real exchange, no real interaction. The audience is merely an interchangeable placeholder in his show. The vicious circles that form here follow a pattern that we know well by now. If the audience is listening excitedly to the talkative dramatizing style, then he is affirmed and he is acknowledged and he gets fired up even more, the audience gets even more excited, and so on. However, if the audience is reluctant and is annoyed and doesn't want to listen, then he feels unacknowledged and thus he tries even harder. So again, he gets fired up even more, the audience gets annoyed even more, and so on. It seems paradoxical that success and failure ultimately lead to the same reaction. However, we have to keep in mind that this behavior happens unconsciously. And this is probably the reason why such problematic patterns of behavior get engraved so deeply over a long time and why it is so difficult for us to get rid of them. I might produce an additional video about Schulz von Thun's vicious circle as a supplement to this one, where I talk about them in some more detail. However, I think they are pretty much self-explanatory for now. Have you recognized communication styles that you use frequently yourself, or maybe styles that are used frequently in your surroundings? Let me know in the comments. I'm looking forward to your feedback. And don't forget to like the video. This is how it's supposed to be done. If you want to make sure you don't miss any future videos, please subscribe to the channel, such as next week's video about communication styles from the point of view of personal development. This was quite a long video, English version even more so than the German one. Thanks a lot for sticking with me till the end. We will see each other next week. For today, I'll take my leave. Have a nice day. See you next time.